everybody's gonna jump for joy. Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn. I like to go just like the rest. I like my sugar sweet, but jumping queues and making haste just ain't my cup of meat. Everyone's beneath the trees feeding pigeons on a limb. But when Quinn the Eskimo gets here, all the pigeons gonna run to him. Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn. Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn. Let me do what I wanna do. I can't decide them all. Just tell me where to put them, and I'll tell you who to call. Nobody can get no sleep with someone on everyone's toes. But when Quinn the Eskimo gets here, everybody's gonna wanna doze. Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn. Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn. Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn.
Manfred Mann, with vocals by Mike Darbo, begins this look at the life and career of the singer, songwriter and radio presenter. Mike was born on the 1st of March 1944 in Stoke Darbannon, Surrey, and was the second of three boys. His father, Edward, worked in the City of London, where his own father had been the youngest ever chairman of Hambros Bank. His mother's family had long-standing connections with the John Smith breweries, but it was her love of music and cricket which had the strongest influence on his early life, and eventually his chosen career. She was an accomplished pianist and taught Mike to play when he was still at a very early age. Numbers by Fred Astaire and Fats Waller were amongst the songs he recalls learning. After attending Wellesley House Prep Boarding School, he followed his elder brother Philip to Harrow Public School in 1957. Here he did particularly well at music, art and sport, but despite this heavy workload, in 1960 he managed to develop his love of music further by forming a pop group, a band of angels. The original members were Mike Darbo, piano and vocals, James Rugg Price, drums, David Wilkinson, bass, Johnny Baker, lead guitar, and Johnny Gaydon, rhythm guitar and vocals. Up to that time, the only modern music heard in the school came from jazz groups, and a band of angels were the first school group to play in the main hall prior to the occasional films showed there. They played mainly covers of current hit records by such as The Shadows, Duane Eddy and Cliff Richard. Indeed, Mike vividly remembers singing The Young Ones.
They decided to give me this song to sing, and I sat on the front of the stage very, very, very self-conscious indeed. And we probably had 15 minutes before the film show, and I staggered through The Young Ones, probably the most nerve-wracking experience of my life.
The young ones, darling, we're the young ones, and the young ones shouldn't be afraid to live low while the flame is strong, 'cause we may not be the young ones very long.
The band became very popular, mainly by word-of-mouth recommendation, and played several dates on the London debutante circuit, usually for £10 or £15 a time, although on one memorable occasion they received £25. On leaving Harrow, he and Johnny Baker went to Cambridge University to study theology and maths respectively. At the time, Mike had strong thoughts on entering the church, but soon changed his mind when he realised the coursework required him to study Greek, Hebrew, geography and history, as well as the expected Old Testament. He switched to economics, but after failing his first-year exams, was sent down. After this unfortunate beginning to his further education, his father didn't feel inclined to support him financially when Mike considered going to America to study jazz piano. Instead, he helped him secure his first full-time job with Rudell Cart, a subsidiary of Boozy and Hawkes based in Denman Street, Soho, who specialised in musical instruments. Meanwhile, the band continued to play the Deb circuit, but now graduated to clubs in the evenings and at weekends with great success. It also became absolutely essential socially to engage them for a private party or a ball. It was simply the thing to do. Amongst this round of exclusive engagements was an annual event at Kensington Town Hall known as Shake with a Band of Angels. This was the London social event of the year, and they played this date on 3 occasions. Their recording contract came about in 1964 when John Barry, instrumental group leader turned film music composer, turned up at Kensington Town Hall with his acting friends Michael Caine, Terence Stamp and David Warner.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
He liked what he heard and asked the band if they would be interested in recording for him, as he was thinking of setting up a new independent record production company. Following their eager acceptance of the offer, A Band of Angels became his first signing. Mike remembers the recording session for their first single, which consisted of Me and Not True As Yet, both composed by the new songwriting partnership of Darbo and Baker. This took place at the old Olympic Studios in London, and Mike was the only band member to actually play an instrument on the session. He played piano and duetted with Johnny Gaydon on vocals.
Let me say I'm thinking of you the whole night long, just like I do since we met. If I say the words I love you, I do you wrong, 'cause that's not true as yet, 'cause that's not true. Oh no, not true as yet. Now, don't get me wrong now, it won't be so long now before I can say all these things. But till I do, sweet, I'm still wanting you, sweet. See what the future can bring. Every girl is just the same. She longs to hear I love you, but she'll regret. Don't you say that I'm to blame, but I don't care, 'cause that's not true as yet, 'cause that's not true. Oh no, not true as yet. Now, don't get me wrong now, it won't be so long now before I can say all these things. But till I do, sweet, I'm still wanting you, sweet. See what the future can bring. Let me say I'm thinking of you the whole night long, just like I do since we met. If I say the words I love you, I do you wrong, 'cause that's not true as yet, 'cause that's not true. Oh no, not true as yet, 'cause that's not true. Oh no, not true as yet, 'cause that's not true. Oh no, not true as yet.
Not True As Yet by A Band of Angels, with Mike Darbo on vocals. The band then turned professional following an offer from their new manager John Coast, who also managed Nina and Frederick and Marlene Dietrich. Rug Price, however, was not interested in turning professional and was replaced on drums by Andy Petrie. Coast had an office in Knightsbridge, and on the floor above were United Artists music publishers, and in particular Noel Rogers, the British head of the company. Barry already knew Rogers from his James Bond film scores made for United Artists, so the band's first recordings were for this label. Then, together with publicist Rex Berry and John Coast, Barry set about creating an image for the band, playing on their elitist background and their name. They were dressed in natty mohair suits and photographed by the up-and-coming Gerard Mankiewicz. During this period, they played regularly at the London night spots Brad's and the Ad Lib. On one occasion, Mike spotted the Beatles and Wives and Girlfriends entering the club and quickly switched the band to playing a medley of their hits. They were later asked to join the Beatles for a drink, when Mike immediately did his best to chat up Jane Asher, then going out with Paul McCartney.
I could see the Beatles out of the corner of my eye. John and Cynthia, Paul and Jane, George and Patty, Ringo, I imagine with Maureen, though I couldn't swear to that. And we were on stage playing, and I saw all of them come in. The rest of the band didn't see them. And so I changed all the numbers to feature me on Beatles songs because I wanted to impress them. And it had the desired effect, because at the end of our set, apart from the band coming up and saying, "Why have you changed all the set list?" And I said, "Look, the Beatles are down the back there." And sure enough, one of the barmen or waiters came up and said, the Beatles would like to buy you a drink. Would you like to go and join them? Which I thought was fantastic. I chatted up Jane Asher most of the night, and I offered to buy her a drink. And I remember her turning to Paul and saying, "Paul, is it all right? This young man wants to buy me a drink." And Paul said, "Please yourself, love, you know, whatever you want." So I remember that quite clearly.
The band made a film with several other popular artists, as well as appearing on a number of the pop TV shows of the day. Mike remembers in particular an appearance on Thank Your Lucky Stars, when it became apparent that some of the other groups looked down on them because of their privileged background. They apparently didn't consider a band of angels could be taken seriously.
Well, I think we stood out like a sore thumb, really, because if you think about it, 99.9% of all groups who were performing in this period were out to improve their lot in life. They were coming from poorer backgrounds, certainly different type of schools. And, I mean, Liverpool was certainly very much in vogue, Birmingham, you know, you had to come from some part of the country. You know, Scotland was actually quite in vogue too. We were 4 or were we 5, I forget how many, public school boys, which was, you know, people would say, well, what on earth are you doing in this business? I knew why I was in the business, because I wanted to make music, and I think we were quite sincere in our love of music. We were all heavy-duty Beatle fans. And so to my mind, okay, we talked differently when we spoke, but when we opened our mouths to sing, I wanted to be considered as good or bad as the next guy. I wasn't expecting any preferential treatment.
It was at that point that Mike became even more determined to succeed, because for him, the music was the most important thing. The United Artists contract didn't produce much record success for the group, and in 1965 they acquired a new manager and signed for Decca. Here they were produced by Gus Dudgeon and Dick Rowe, before switching finally to Piccadilly, where they were produced by former JB7 pianist Les Reed and John Schroeder. It was whilst at Piccadilly during 1966 that they received their only real success chart-wise with Invitation. This just made the top 40, peaking at number 36. During the spring of 1966, Manfred Mann's lead singer, Paul Jones, announced his intention to leave the band for a solo career. Manfred Mann ran into Mike Darboe at EMI when both bands were doing a Radio Luxembourg programme, and were apparently impressed with both his singing style and looks, which bore a resemblance to that of Jones. After the show, Manfred himself asked for his phone number, which Mike assumed meant the possibility of future bookings for a band of angels.
When he did finally call me a week later, it wasn't anything to do with getting work for the band, but he said, let's meet for lunch. And because I was going out with Maggie at the time, who became became my first wife, I should say, she was doing a modelling job with Joanna Lumley down in a hotel near Maidstone. And I remember saying to her, look, I said, Manfred Mann has called me up today. He wants me to have lunch next week. I wonder why. And she said, I think he wants you to join the band, be the lead singer. I said, what an extraordinary thing. No. But by the time the lunch had come along, it seemed to me that she might have a point. Of course, women's intuition in hindsight. And so we had the lunch, and right at the end of the lunch, he popped the question. He said, we might be considering, Paul might be leaving. We might be thinking about you. And I gave a good account of myself. And now, subsequently, finding out how many other people were up for the job, I can't think why they gave it to me.
The change in singer coincided with a change of record label for Manfred Mann, who moved from HMV to Fontana. Mike's debut single, a cover of Bob Dylan's Just Like a Woman, entered the charts in August 1966, reaching number 10.
Like a little girl. Nobody feels anything. Tonight as I stand inside the rain, everybody knows that baby's got new clothes, but lately I see her ribbon. The bows have fallen from her curls. Oh, she tastes just like a woman. Yes, she does now. Makes love just like a woman. I said she aches just like a woman, but she breaks just like a little.
Just Like a Woman by Manfred Mann, which became the first of several successive top 10 hits featuring the voice of Mike Darboe. Fans of the group were quick to accept him as replacement for the popular Paul Jones, and they headlined many sell-out tours around the UK and occasionally into Europe, not to mention numerous TV appearances ranging from Top of the Pops and Thank Your Lucky Stars to Crackerjack and The Basil Brush Show. Mike continued writing songs, and his The Vicar's Daughter was considered for release as a Manfred Mann A-side, though eventually it was included on the album Mighty Garvey. Despite several huge hits with Manfred Mann, he was never really happy singing this type of material. The hit single policy, encouraged by their record company, led to more general discontentment amongst the band. And in 1969, as they disbanded, he was more than ready to begin a solo career as a singer-songwriter.
Come 69, we had our last hit with Ragamuffin Man, and I felt that I was happy to stay with Manfred Mann as long as I could do my solo album. I started the solo album project with Andrew Oldham, and they had the nerve to issue an injunction on me, and one of the records I'd made for Gulliver's Travels had to be withdrawn from the market, and I thought they were acting very paranoid, but they thought I was going to do another Paul Jones, you see, on them. Well, in fact, what happened was that Manfred and Mike Hugg got back to their jazz roots and decided to form a new jazz-type outfit, which they called Emanon, which is no name backwards, which ultimately became Manfred Mann Chapter 3, which sold precisely no records. They got a $1 million advance for it. And I was back out in the marketplace, you know. We called it a day in 69. Everyone thought that I would go from strength to strength, and I didn't, actually, because I was in, you know, writing these musicals, and I've never been an opportunist, so even though I had possibly the world at my feet, I certainly didn't capitalize on it.
Manfred Mann and Mike Hugg had made an initial foray into films when they wrote some of the songs for Up the Junction. But Darbo's first solo contribution to this genre came in 1970, when he wrote the entire score for the comedy There's a Girl in My Soup, which starred Peter Sellers and Goldie Hawn.
I've been thinking about you. I wish I could forget, and I would if I thought that I should, but not just yet. Darling, all I'm asking is one more hour of your time to make up your mind. Then if you wanna call it a day, I wouldn't stand in your way. But if you miss me in the morning, let me know to give me a warning, and I'll be around to see you right away at the break of the day. But if you last the night without me, fair enough, forget about me, and I'll never try to see you anymore. Put a lock on the door. You see me no more. You see me no more. Are you thinking about me, girl? If I only knew, maybe I could be learning to fly to get to you. Darling, all I'm asking is one more hour of your time to make up your mind. Then if you make me a theme, I'll be there in your dreams. Yes, I will. And if you miss me in the morning, let me know to give me a warning, and I'll be around to see you right away at the break of the day. But if you last the night without me, well, fair enough, forget about me, and I'll never try to see you anymore. Put a lock on the door. You see me no more. You see me no more. But if you miss me in the morning, let me know to give me a warning, and I'll be around to see you right away. But if you last the night without me, well, fair enough, forget about me, and I'll never try to see you.
Miss Me in the Morning from There's a Girl in My Soup, sung by Mike Darbo. In the same year, back in the world of theatre, he could be heard singing on a pre-show recording of a musical by the new and phenomenally successful songwriting partnership of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. On the concept album of Jesus Christ Superstar, prior to its long London run, he portrayed King Herod, and subsequent stage and film performances of King Herod's song were undoubtedly based on his original interpretation.
Jesus, I am overjoyed to meet you face to face. You've been getting quite a name all around the place. Healing cripples, raising from the dead. And now I understand you're God. At least that's what you've said. So you are the Christ, you're the great Jesus Christ. Prove to me that you're divine. Change my water into wine. That's all you need do, and I'll know it's all true. Come on, King of the Jews. Jesus, you just won't believe the hit you've made round here. You are all we talk about, the wonder of the year. Oh, what a pity if it's all a lie. Still, I'm sure that you can rock the cynics if you try. So you are the Christ, you're the great Jesus Christ. Prove to me that you're no fool. Walk across my swimming pool. If you do that for me, then I'll let you go free. Come on, King of the Jews. Things I'd ask any superstar. What is it that you have got that puts you where you are? I am waiting. Yes, I'm a captive fan. I'm dying to be shown that you are not just any man. So if you are the Christ, yes, the great Jesus Christ, feed my household with this bread. You can do it on your head. Or has something gone wrong? Why do you take so long? Come on, King of the Jews. Hey, aren't you scared of me, Christ? Mr. Wonderful Christ. You're a joke, you're not the Lord. You're nothing but a fraud. Take him away, he's got nothing to say. Get out, you King of the... Get out! Get out, you King of the Jews! Get out, you King of the Jews! Get out of my life!
King Herod's song from the musical Jesus Christ Superstar.
I had finally got myself a record deal with MCA in about 1970, or possibly it was 71. And Brian Brolly, who was the new managing director of MCA, said, I'd like you to meet two young people I've just signed, Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber, who I might add had been turned down by at least 4 or 5 record companies with their Jesus Christ Superstar project. And I said, OK, I'll give it a listen. I didn't think much of the score, I have to tell you. Andrew Lloyd Webber, I thought then, and I still think now, is not a very good piano player. And I heard this rather sort of heavy-handed sort of accompaniment of some songs I thought not much of at all, not very well sung by Andrew and Tim, and I thought, well, I don't see much in this at all. But they said, would you sing this King Herod song? However, there is another side to the coin, because about 3 months later, when they had got into the studio with the Grease Band, now the Grease Band were Joe Cocker's backing band, and very, very good. I mean, really top-notch musicians. And they had taken these ham-fisted songs that I'd heard Andrew playing on the piano and transformed them into some really rock and roll. You know, it had suddenly street cred in the tracks. So the song that I got to sing on, even though it was a bit of a music hall pastiche, I was quite happy the way that was done. In fact, I remember going in, because I'd probably heard the song for half an hour, around with Tim and Andrew. I went in 3 months later. They said, look, we've got the backing track ready. I walked in. Half an hour later, I walked out. Because, you know, songs are easy to learn. I didn't think much of it then. I didn't give it another thought until the finished album, as I say, with the Grease Band adding a lot of weight and depth to the backing tracks, some wonderful, towering performances by Ian Gillan and Yvonne Elliman and Murray Head, of course. And I thought the project had a lot going for it. I think Murray Head's Jesus Christ Superstar, in fact, entered the singles charts, top 40. And what surprised me when I actually got to see the show on Broadway a year or two later was I thought, this guy who was camping it up, because it became a very camp number, had impersonated my vocal interpretation note for note. But it was much more camped up, you know. And I hadn't realized that what I'd done as a throwaway vocal take, including that line, "Get out of my life," which I just threw away as an improvisation, you know, all this became copied note for note. You know, "Walk across my swimming pool." It was just something that one did, you know, and moved on to the next project. Will turn your head around. Yes, it will. But don't on any count turn your back. 'Cause to do so, that would be your ruin. Kindly stop whatever you are doing. 'Cause there's a better dream that's worth pursuing.
Over the next 4 or 5 years, Mike continued to write and produce for other artists. In 1974, for example, he wrote several tracks for Australian vocalist John Christie's debut album, Relax. Christie was also the protege of Dave Clark of the Dave Clark Five, whose lead singer, Mike Smith, was also involved in this album.
When I met up with Mike Smith in 75, 76, this was me, in a way, going back full circle, trying to connect up with some of the pop elements of Manfred Mann. And Mike Smith, with his track record with Dave Clark Five, I mean, a fabulous singer. What a singer. Not a bad piano player and a keyboard player like myself. And he respected music, and I think that the songs we wrote together, I think I was the leading light, the guiding force, but we couldn't have done it without each other. The demos we made for that were really good. They were red hot, but of course they weren't quite to the sound quality, so we hawked around the demos and got ourselves a record deal with CBS, and I think 75 or 76. And I don't think the album's as good as the demos, but I think there's 12 cracking good songs on there, and they stand up to me. Well, of course, we had 2 songs recorded. Manhattan Transfer recorded Running Away from Love, and the Carpenters recorded Hollywood Symphony. Neither of them sadly released, but I suppose, looking back, something like Running Away from Love was really a poor man's version of Hall & Oates, and I'm quite proud to be associated with stuff like that.
In 1976, he again featured on a pre-show recording of a Lloyd Webber Tim Rice musical. For Evita, he teamed up with Mike Smith. They were billed as Dolan Getter and Sidekick, Dolan Getter being played by Smith. Recording opportunities were now beginning to dry up, and Mike wondered whether there might be more opportunities for his talents in America. Accordingly, in December of the following year, Mike, together with his wife Maggie, daughter Olivia and son Ben, left for Taos in New Mexico.
Basically, my artistic ambitions were very frustrated by now. I knew what I wanted to create and achieve, and I was falling way short. I wasn't earning money. It seemed time to get out. Why did we go to America? Possibly to save the marriage, possibly to start a new life in a different environment. It was also a very, very important period for me to discover another culture. I mean, you know, England and London is one thing, but I needed to broaden my horizons, because I think I was a little bit still the product of my background, whereas when I got to America, this is a totally different culture. And New Mexico, where we moved to, beautiful, beautiful part of the world, the old Badlands, where all the cowboys used to hide out. And I got to meet country musicians, I got to play all the piano bars, I got to live the life, really, of a sort of a frontiersman, of a pioneer. I really became a bit of a cowboy in the best meaning of the word. And this was cowboy in Indian country. I was learning a new culture because this was all the Spanish culture. Life was very exciting, but as for my career, it wasn't really making any advances.
In 1982, he married his second wife, Karen, and the couple returned to live in England, actually Colne St Aldwyn's near Cirencester in the Cotswolds. He initially found it difficult to get work, having lost many of his musical contacts during the 5 years in America. But in 1986, following the axing of regular presenter Keith Fordyce, Radio 2 decided to opt for pop stars to present individual editions of Sounds of the 60s, and he got the opportunity to present 3 such episodes.
Well, now, radio was something I had not given a thought to, not a moment's thought to, because I don't know why I hadn't considered it, but I suppose to précis my life, I always wanted to be a music maker. I loved the piano, I loved singing. I'd had my spell with Manfred Mann where I thought I got the fame but not the fortune, and certainly I hadn't as yet got my creative expression out, you know. You have to realise with me, you're dealing with a very frustrated person who's now come a long way away from what he really wants or wanted to be doing. So in a way, I thought I was too artistic, too creative, too fragile, too sensitive to have anything to do with radio. It was not until I got asked to do a Sounds of the 60s that I gave any thought to the idea of a radio career, and I selected some records and I wrote a few links, because you're advised to write them out, and they seemed quite pleased with the results, and I did another. And then when I'd done a third Sounds of the 60s, I actually got asked by Stuart Hobday to sit in for Angela Rippon down here in Bristol for one of her Radio 2 programmes on a Friday night. I then got asked to stand in for David Hamilton for some of his afternoon shows, and David Hamilton was wonderful. There's another radio personality who I admire enormously. But I wasn't good enough. I mean, I really hadn't got to the stage where I could just talk on a radio. I had to write down my links. I remember saying to them, could you send me the music in advance? Can you tell me in advance what records I'm going to be playing? Because I wanted to be imparting knowledge.
Having been well and truly bitten by the broadcasting bug, Mike decided this was the next career move for him. After stints with the commercial stations Radio Wyvern and Seven Sound, he spent 3 years with BBC Radio Gloucestershire, presenting the afternoon show as well as 2 weekly shows, Darbo's Goldmine and Prime Cuts. But he didn't want to completely neglect his first love, singing, and in 1987 he formed another band, known as Mike Darbo's Mighty Quintet.
87 was a turning point because I formed a band, which again I'd never thought of, and I'm now dealing with two topics in one, radio and the band, but it really was a turning point because I did not want to play live music. I never have done. I was happy to earn a few bucks in piano bars. I could just sit in a corner of a bar, play the piano, sing a few things like Twist and Shout, You've Lost That Loving Feeling, Georgia on My Mind, Hallelujah, I Love Her So, the odd Beatles number, the odd Everly's Buddy Holly number, something like that. But the idea of forming a band and selling one's music, projecting one's music, it filled me with absolute horror. The excuse I gave for the band was that 60s music was coming back, so nostalgia is in demand, so why not form a band, you know? But I really, it again took a huge leap of nerves and confidence to sort of dare to go up to musicians and say, look, you've probably never heard of me, but would you like to be in my band? Can we rehearse? And the same with the radio. And I did Seven Sound, I did Solid Gold Sunday. I sort of had kittens every Sunday, you know, doing it. But bit by bit, I learnt a little bit more until they offered me the job on Radio Gloucestershire to do the afternoon show. And I made dreadful mistakes. I was in 1968, you know, but the year was 1987. So I had a lot of ground to make up. But yes, I did the radio, and I thought, hey, I can do this. And that was my turning point.
The Mighty Quintet got a deal with President Records and released Indestructible the same year, consisting entirely of Darbo originals, and in 1988, Tomorrow's Troubadour, which had one side of new self-penned songs and the other comprising of some Manfred Mann hits, plus his versions of his two most successful songs, Build Me Up Buttercup and Handbags and Glad Rags. The Mighty Quintet play weekend gigs on a regular basis, sometimes at local West Country venues, but often at large-scale charity functions and parties. Their live repertoire consists mainly of hits from the 60s and 70s, and Mike considers it somewhat ironic that having started out playing cover versions of hit records with a band of angels, nearly 30 years later he's doing exactly the same thing. His career in local radio continued, and a spell deputising for Al Reid on the BBC's regionalised Late Night West led to him eventually taking over the show in April 1991.
Greetings all, my name is Mike Darbo. Welcome along to a brand new week of broadcasting. Together, we're going to share Late Night West. Between now and midnight, 3 thought-provoking competitions, which are Rhyming Couples, Odd One Out, Rearing Its Devious Head, Pop Posers in the final half an hour. The theme for that is Fool, the word Fool. We got some regional news stories. We got the sport 10:30, weather at 11, plenty of your kind of music, and a fair bit of chat as well. So stick around if you possibly can. Why not a spot of John and Olivia to kick off with?
A recent development has seen the reforming of Manfred Mann, minus the leader and founder of the same name, who wasn't interested. Very recently, they went back into the recording studios and both Mike and Paul Jones recorded vocals. But with all these different projects, how does Mike see the future?
The main thing is that you never give up on anything. You never close any doors knowingly. I'm writing songs as well as ever, better than ever, even though I don't have the time at the moment to record them. That's the big frustration in my life. With my band aspirations is to move more into Nat King Cole, Louis Jordan, Louis Prima, jump and jive music, swing music. Radio work, I'd like to think I could get some national radio. And all I know is to generate the money, I've got to keep working for many, many years to come.
A prospect you enjoy, presumably?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, I have now got myself in good training. The moment we are talking now, I got to bed at 7 o'clock this morning, and I was up at 11. I couldn't do that every night, but that was my band. We were playing in Cambridge. And I'm in good training. I hump all the gear, I put it on stage, I take it off. We're a cooperative band. I work hard. I try and get up leisurely and eat a healthy diet where I can, try and get enough sleep. But I think I'm going to be doing it well into my 70s, not only because I need to earn the money to keep all the children and ex-wives and all the other things that I have, the responsibilities I've generated in my life, but because I sort of love it. And for the 10 or 15 years, I was a bit off the rails and I was a bit sort of out on a limb. Luckily, thanks to the radio and the band and the live work, it's got me back into the mainstream. And I think it's very, very good for me because this is the life I love.
What happened to the world we knew? Where did it all go wrong? And were those anthems all in vain when we would sing along? We're waiting for a new troubadour to lead us into the light and show the flame of music still shines bright. Troubadour, for he carries the world in his hand. May his healing songs of love ring out across our land. Who can ignore tomorrow's troubadour when he carries the world in a song? Maybe teach the world to sing along. Someday a kid must make a bid with vision on his mind and point us to a better world that's fit for all mankind. And when he does, it's up to us to rally round to his call and show the world that music conquers all. Songs of love ring out across our land. Who can ignore tomorrow's troubadour when he carries the world in a song? Maybe teach the world to sing along. Sing along. Carries the world in his hand, and may his healing songs of love ring out across our land. Who can ignore tomorrow's troubadour when he carries the world in a song? May he teach the world to sing along. Sing along. Sing along.
Tomorrow's Troubadour, the Mike Darbo story, was written and researched by Jeff Leonard and produced and presented by Phil Vowels. If you yearn for more Mike, tune in at 10:05 tonight as Late Night West begins a new week. After the news now, Bank Holiday Sports Special, presented live from Twerton Park by Jeff Twentyman.